It was a gloomy autumn evening in Sacramento, a city known for its peaceful neighborhoods and friendly communities. I was a young detective back then, eager to prove myself and solve the most challenging cases. Little did I know that the case of Miranda Fenners, a video rental store employee, would be one that would haunt me for years. Miranda was a vivacious and well-liked young woman who had worked at the local video rental store for several years. She was the type of person who could light up a room with her infectious smile and caring nature. Her colleagues and customers adored her, making it difficult to imagine anyone wanting to harm her. On that fateful day, Miranda was finishing up her shift at the video rental store, helping a customer with movie recommendations. As the evening grew darker, she waved goodbye to her coworkers, promising to meet up with them later for drinks at a nearby cafe. Little did they know that it would be the last time they would see her alive. The next morning, when Miranda didn't show up for work, her colleagues became worried. It was unlike her to miss a shift without notifying anyone. They tried calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Concerned, they contacted her friends and family, hoping someone knew her whereabouts. As the hours turned into days, fear and anxiety gripped the community. The police were informed, and the search for Miranda commenced. We combed through surveillance footage from nearby businesses, trying to retrace her steps after leaving the video rental store. It seemed like she had vanished into thin air, leaving behind no traces of her whereabouts. Despite conducting extensive interviews and following every lead, the investigation into Miranda's disappearance hit a dead end. It was as if she had disappeared into the void, leaving us with more questions than answers. We kept at it, hoping for a breakthrough, but weeks turned into months, and the case grew colder. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something crucial we were missing. It gnawed at me day and night, pushing me to revisit the evidence repeatedly. However, with each passing day, the chances of finding Miranda alive dwindled, and the focus shifted to finding her remains and bringing her family closure. Years passed, and the case of Miranda Fenners became one of those unsolved mysteries that haunted the department. Despite the lack of progress, we never forgot her. Her smile, captured in photographs and videos, stared back at us from the case files, a constant reminder of our failure to bring her justice. Then, after 2 decades of agony, a breakthrough finally occurred. A routine investigation into a separate crime led us to a man with a criminal history that stretched back to the time of Miranda's disappearance. His name was Arthur Weller, and he had been arrested for drug-related offenses, among other things. During the interrogation, Weller made a shocking confession. He admitted to being involved in Miranda's disappearance and eventual murder. He recounted how, on that autumn evening, he had followed her from the video rental store, intending to rob it to feed his drug addiction. As he confronted her outside, things took a dark turn. In a moment of desperation, fueled by his addiction, he attacked Miranda, unintentionally causing her death. Panicking, he disposed of her body in a remote location, hoping it would never be found. Weller's confession brought a mixture of relief and sorrow to the investigators who had tirelessly pursued the case. Finally, there was an answer to the mystery that had eluded us for so long. However, the closure came too late for Miranda's loved ones, who had spent decades hoping for her safe return. The news of the breakthrough sent shockwaves through the community, reopening old wounds and stirring emotions that had been buried for years. The trial that followed was a somber affair, with Miranda's family finally facing the man responsible for their daughter's death. The courtroom was packed with people who had never forgotten Miranda, even after all those years. They listened intently as Weller's dark and sinister actions were revealed, a stark contrast to the bright and loving person Miranda had been. In the end, justice prevailed, and Weller was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Miranda Fenners. It was a bittersweet victory, knowing that no amount of punishment could bring Miranda back or erase the pain her loved ones had endured for 2 decades. As the years passed, the memory of Miranda Fenners remained etched in my mind. Her case had taught me valuable lessons about perseverance, the fragility of life, and the importance of never giving up on seeking the truth. Though the pain of her loss would never fade, the closure brought by solving her case was a reminder of why I had chosen this profession. to bring justice to those who had been wronged, no matter how long it took. After Arthur Weller's conviction for the murder of Miranda Fenners, a heavy weight seemed to lift from the hearts of those who had tirelessly sought justice for her all those years. For me, as a young detective who had been deeply involved in the case, the resolution brought a mix of emotions: relief that we had finally found answers, but also a profound sadness for the life cut short and the pain endured by her family and friends. With the trial over, I couldn't help but revisit the details of the case, trying to make sense of the events that had transpired more than 2 decades ago. It was time to delve into the past, to retrace the steps of the investigation, and to understand how the truth had been hidden for so long. As I flipped through old case files, I came across the initial interviews conducted when Miranda first disappeared. The sorrow and concern expressed by her friends and family during those early days were heartbreaking. They had desperately clung to hope, praying that she would come back unharmed. Back then, we had meticulously searched the area surrounding the video rental store, looking for any signs of struggle or clues that could point us in the right direction. But it seemed as though Miranda had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an empty void in the lives of those who loved her. Reconnecting with Miranda's former colleagues, I listened to their accounts of that fateful evening. They recalled her bright smile as she said goodbye, never suspecting that it would be their final farewell. It was evident that Miranda had made a lasting impact on those around her, and the pain of her absence still lingered in their voices. The breakthrough in the case had come from an unexpected direction, an entirely different investigation that had led us to Arthur Weller. The realization that the person responsible for Miranda's disappearance had been in our sights all along was both unsettling and infuriating. How had we missed the connection between Weller and the unsolved case for so long? As I delved deeper into Weller's background, I discovered a trail of criminal activities stretching back to the time of Miranda's disappearance. He had been involved in drug-related offenses and had a history of violence. It became apparent that his addiction had fueled a dark and dangerous path, leading to the tragic event that had changed so many lives forever. The courtroom proceedings had been a somber affair, as the truth about what happened to Miranda was laid bare for all to hear. The pain of her loss was palpable, and it was evident that the wounds inflicted by her absence would never fully heal. As a detective, I had seen my fair share of trials, but this one struck a different chord. It reminded me that behind every case file, there were real people with real lives and real pain. In the aftermath of Weller's sentencing, I reached out to Miranda's family. I wanted to offer my condolences and perhaps some small measure of solace that justice had finally been served. Sitting down with her parents, I could feel the weight of their grief, but I also saw the strength and resilience that had carried them through the darkest times. They shared stories about Miranda, recounting cherished memories of their daughter. She had been an adventurous spirit, always eager to try new things and make the most of every moment. Their love for her was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of empathy for their loss. As we talked, they expressed gratitude for the determination of the investigative team that had never given up on the case. Despite the years that had passed, they were relieved to know that Miranda had not been forgotten, and her life had not been in vain. In the weeks that followed, I continued to reflect on the case, searching for any lessons that could be gleaned from this tragic event. It was a reminder that even the most cold cases could still be solved with perseverance and a commitment to seeking the truth. As detectives, it was our duty to be the voice for the victims, even when their cries had long been silenced. The case of Miranda Fenners became a turning point in my career. It deepened my resolve to fight for justice and to never let a case go cold. It also taught me the importance of compassion and empathy when dealing with the families of victims. Behind every unsolved case, there were grieving loved ones desperately seeking closure and answers. Though the pain of losing Miranda would never fully fade, the resolution of the case brought a sense of peace. It was a bittersweet victory, but it served as a testament to the power of determination and the pursuit of truth. As the years passed, I moved on to other cases, but Miranda's memory stayed with me. Her bright smile and the lives she touched served as a constant reminder of why I had chosen this profession. I would forever carry the weight of her story, hoping that justice served would bring some measure of healing to those left behind. In the aftermath of the long-awaited closure to Miranda Fenner's case, life at the police department slowly returned to its routine. But for those of us who had been deeply involved in the investigation, the impact of the case lingered like a haunting presence. The memory of Miranda's bright spirit and the pain caused by her senseless death stayed with us, a constant reminder of why we chose this profession, to seek justice for the innocent. The case had left an indelible mark on my career, influencing the way I approached every subsequent investigation. It had taught me to view each case as more than just a file to be closed. Behind every case was a human life, a family in anguish, and a community seeking answers. Miranda's case had also deepened my appreciation for the importance of cooperation and collaboration among law enforcement agencies. As time passed, I couldn't help but wonder about the tangled fates that had brought Arthur Weller and Miranda together on that fatal evening. What led Weller down a path of darkness and violence? How had he become so entangled in a life of crime that it culminated in such a tragedy? To answer these questions, I decided to retrace Weller's journey from his early days to the time he committed the heinous act. Delving into his troubled past, I discovered a broken childhood marked by neglect and abuse. Growing up in a dysfunctional family, Weller's life had been marred by instability and a lack of positive role models. As a teenager, Weller had fallen into the dark abyss of drug addiction, which had become the driving force behind his criminal activities. His dependency on drugs pushed him deeper into a life of crime, where he associated with other individuals who shared his destructive tendencies. It was a vicious cycle that seemed to have no way out. During his trial, Weller admitted that on the night of Miranda's disappearance, he had intended to rob the video rental store to fund his insatiable craving for drugs. As he watched her leave work, he saw an opportunity to carry out his plan. But his desperation and addiction clouded his judgment, leading to a violent confrontation that resulted in Miranda's untimely death. Though Weller's confession shed light on the motive behind the crime, it did little to alleviate the pain and sorrow felt by Miranda's loved ones. The realization that her death was a tragic consequence of an individual's descent into darkness was a bitter pill to swallow. It underscored the devastating consequences that drug addiction could have on not just the individual, but also on the lives of those around them. As I continued to dig deeper into the case, I realized that there were lessons to be learned beyond the investigation itself. The story of Arthur Weller was a poignant reminder of the importance of addressing the root causes of crime, such as addiction and mental health issues in our society. Perhaps if there had been more accessible resources and support for individuals like Weller, the tragic events of that autumn evening could have been averted. Miranda's case also emphasized the significance of community vigilance. It was a stark reminder that even in the most peaceful neighborhoods, tragedy could strike unexpectedly. As a community, we needed to remain watchful and compassionate, supporting one another during difficult times and taking action to prevent crimes from occurring. Over time, the wounds caused by Miranda's disappearance began to heal, but her memory remained a beacon of hope for change. Her legacy served as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, the importance of seeking justice, and the need to address the underlying issues that lead individuals astray. As the years passed, the investigation into Miranda Fenner's case faded from the headlines, but it remained etched in the memories of those who had been involved. It became one of those stories whispered among law enforcement circles, a testament to the perseverance and dedication of the investigators who had never given up on finding the truth. Miranda's story had left an enduring impact on me personally. It reinforced my commitment to my profession and to the pursuit of justice. Each time I closed a case and brought solace to a grieving family, I couldn't help but think of her and the closure that had finally come after 2 decades. In the end, the story of Miranda Fenners was not just a tale of tragedy, it was a call to action. It reminded us all that in the face of darkness, we must be the light that guides those lost in the shadows. It was a reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, would always prevail in the end. And it was a testament to the power of unity, of a community coming together to seek the truth, find resolution, and honor the memory of a life that was taken too soon. After the conclusion of the Miranda Fenners case, life at the police department settled back into its usual rhythm. However, the impact of that investigation had forever changed my perspective on my work as a detective. It had taught me that even in the darkest corners of society, there was hope for justice and closure. As time passed, I found myself drawn to cases involving addiction and its destructive consequences. The tragic story of Arthur Weller and his descent into darkness had left a profound impression on me. I wanted to understand more about the grip of addiction and the factors that led individuals down such destructive paths. I began collaborating with addiction counselors, social workers, and organizations dedicated to helping those struggling with substance abuse. I sought to gain insight into the complexities of addiction and how it influenced criminal behavior. The more I learned, the more I realized the urgency of addressing addiction as a societal issue rather than simply a criminal one. Miranda's case had shown me that behind every criminal act, there was often a tragic backstory, a web of circumstances and events that pushed individuals to the edge. Arthur Weller's life had been shaped by a tumultuous childhood, and drug addiction had exacerbated his descent into criminality. It made me wonder how many others in our society were grappling with similar struggles. One day, as I was working on another case, I came across a young man named Jake, who had been arrested for drug possession. His story bore an eerie resemblance to Weller's, and I saw an opportunity to intervene and break the cycle before it led to irreversible consequences. Instead of solely focusing on the legal aspects of Jake's case, I decided to take a different approach. I sought to understand his journey, the factors that had led him to addiction, and the support system, or lack thereof, in his life. It was evident that his addiction had taken control of his life, and his involvement in crime was a means to sustain his habit. As I delved deeper into Jake's story, I saw the familiar patterns of despair, neglect, and loneliness that had also characterized Weller's life. His addiction had become a coping mechanism to deal with the emotional pain and trauma he had endured in his past. It was a vicious cycle where drugs offered temporary solace, only to drag him deeper into a life of crime and desperation. Working with the court system and addiction counselors, we managed to get Jake into a rehabilitation program instead of serving a lengthy prison sentence. It was a small victory, but it offered a glimmer of hope. Witnessing the transformation in Jake as he went through the rehabilitation process was a testament to the power of intervention and support. Throughout his journey to recovery, I learned that addiction was not just about the individual. It was a disease that affected families, communities, and society as a whole. I became involved in community outreach programs, advocating for more accessible treatment options for those struggling with addiction. I wanted to prevent others from falling into the same dark path that had claimed Miranda's life and almost destroyed Weller's. In my pursuit to address addiction-related issues, I also revisited Miranda's case, hoping to find some solace for her family and community beyond the closure of the trial. I organized a memorial event to honor her memory and raise awareness about the devastating consequences of drug addiction. The event served as a catalyst for dialogue and community support, fostering an environment where people could seek help without fear of judgment. As the years passed, Jake's success story became one of my proudest accomplishments as a detective. Witnessing the transformation of someone who had once been on the brink of destruction, but who had now found hope and purpose in life, was a testament to the power of intervention and compassion. Throughout my career, I continued to advocate for change in the way society approached addiction and criminality. I firmly believed that true justice involved addressing the root causes of crime and providing support and rehabilitation for those who had lost their way. Miranda's story had become more than just a case to me. It was a mission to bring light to the darkest corners of our society. Her memory had inspired me to confront darkness head-on, seeking solutions beyond incarceration. As I reflect on the journey that started with Miranda's disappearance, I am reminded of the profound impact that one case can have on a detective's life. It reinforced the importance of empathy, compassion, and determination in seeking justice. It also taught me that even in the face of tragedy, there was always hope for healing and redemption. The story of Miranda Fenners remains etched in my heart, a constant reminder of why I chose this profession and the responsibility that comes with it. I have come to realize that being a detective is not just about solving cases. It is about being a force for positive change in the lives of those we serve. As I move forward in my career, I will never forget the young woman with the bright smile, the community that rallied in her memory, and the transformative power of confronting darkness and addiction with compassion and hope.